Paul here from My Perfect Failure, helping you turn your failures into successes and your setbacks into opportunities. So what would you do if you lost 25 million and had to live in your car? Most people would break, but Damion Lupo rebuilt. Today I'm speaking with Damion Lupo, a lifelong entrepreneur who started his first business at 11 years of age and has been chasing problems, not money, ever since. In this episode, Damion shares how losing everything taught him his biggest life lessons, why chasing money is the wrong goal, and how embracing pain, curiosity, and complexity can open the doors to entrepreneurial freedom. This conversation will leave you inspired. Damion's honesty and clarity about what really matters in business and life will make you think differently about success. So if you're ready to challenge your mindset and discover the art of solving the right problems and realize your own potential, then hit your play button now.
Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super excited because I've got a wonderful guest for you, somebody that I'm super keen to meet, fascinated by their journey and keen to dig into that and really capture how they've managed to achieve so much with some difficult moments along the way. So my guest today is a seasoned entrepreneur who has launched and grown over 70 companies from zero to 100 million throughout a remarkable 25-year career. Potentially might be more than that now, so that number we might adjust in a second once we get going. In addition to being a prolific author with 12 published books, he is celebrated for his extraordinary achievements in building multiple companies from the ground up, many of which have achieved 7, 8, and even 9-figure valuations. Despite a significant setback that saw him lose a 20 million portfolio at the age of 30, his resilience and determination led him to not only overcome homelessness, but also rebuild his wealth beyond 9 figures. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Damion Lupo. How are you?
Good, Paul. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, you're the reason why I do this podcast. From a selfish perspective, I'm always keen to meet amazing people that have been able to, they're incredibly capable, but particularly people that are able to transition and overcome difficult moments. Because I think that's a skill that unfortunately, I don't think a lot of us have. So I'm always keen and enthusiastic to meet people that have been able to do that in abundance. So keen to capture that. What I noticed researching you is that your entrepreneurial journey began at a young age. I don't know whether you can elaborate on that. I've read that at age 11, you were delving into the entrepreneurial world. What was going on at 11 that you thought there's something I'd like to explore this space?
Back when I was a kid, I was told no and no to virtually everything, including when I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, which was at the time at 11, I wanted to play video games. And I was told we didn't have any money. We were broke. You know, most people, unfortunately, or whatever it is, they're in a place where they don't have unlimited resources. And when you're a kid, parents do the best they can, but if they don't have the money, usually the answer is no. And in my case, I said, well, that no isn't good enough. I'm going to go out there and figure this out. And so I ended up starting a business where I was buying and selling video games so I could play them. And it turned into a wholesale retail business. I would buy blocks of games from people to solve their problem of wanting to sell the games they were bored with. I'd buy 10 or 20 or 30 at a time. at a discount. Instead of buying basically at $25 at the time each, I'd buy them at 10 or 15, play them, and then I'd sell them for $25 each to more of a retail customer. And so at that age, I was able to entertain myself and ended up making money. And in the process, learned how to hire people, hired my parents to drive me around, because at 11, I clearly was not driving, not legally.
Yeah.
And so
You can't admit that anyway.
no, it's, I don't think I was driving very far, maybe around the driveway, but
Yeah.
that was the first business that was, other than maybe cutting somebody's grass, it was actually more of a more sophisticated business, buying and selling, having customers that were broad based. It wasn't just the neighbor's yard. I did that stuff too, but it was a great experience of leverage, where you go and you actually have more than one product. You're not just like as an artist or an artisan, if you create one thing, you sell it to one customer, that's one thing. But when you start expanding and scaling, and this rolls into everything, if you think bigger, generally there's a bigger opportunity, but you have to think bigger. That there's a book called, if you're going to think, think big. And I think that may have been by Tony Schwartz, but
it's David Schwartz. I think I'm reading that randomly at the moment.
Yeah, and so that was really what it was. It wasn't just me going and doing some chores to go buy a game at retail from a store. It was finding a way to solve problems, and that's the key of every entrepreneurial journey and quest. It's, what problem am I solving? This was my problem, and it was other people's problem. When you can combine the two, there's an opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Randomly, it's so curious that I'm reading that book as we speak. So there's lots of synergy there. So when you were 11-year-old and you came up with this idea to sell games, what did it feel like to solve your own problem, but also solve other people's problems? Sorry, but also were you? Because I'm thinking of myself as an 11-year-old, and the idea that I would be, I don't know, have that initiative to do what you were doing. I definitely didn't. I wasn't on that. I didn't have that initiative, but also to actually not just have the initiative, come up with the idea, find customers, and make some money, which I would have been so pleased and chuffed with myself. What was going through your mind as you actually had created a business as an 11-year-old? Can you remember what you were thinking at the time?
I was honestly probably thinking more about the games I got to play than the business. And the one thing that, when I think back, that starts to detach this whole time for money thing, because when you buy 20 video games and you're buying them for 40% less than you're going to sell them for, and then you sell them and you make that 40%, that spread, that's different than working for 10 or 20 or 50 or $100 or pounds an hour. There's a disconnect. And in business, one of the most powerful things is to stop thinking of yourself in terms of dollars per hour or units per hour. That was the first take. I wasn't really thinking about it a whole lot, although I do remember about a decade later, maybe right about then, I did one of my first 3 real estate deals, and in that deal, I ended up selling a house, and I was the bank. I was financing it, and a guy gave me $25,000 as his down payment. And when I had purchased the house, I had purchased it and basically got it for free. Basically, somebody gave me a house, they titled it to me, and they handed me the mortgage to pay, but I didn't give them any money. They just said, please take this off my hands. So the reason I bring that up, the buyer that wanted me to finance gave me $25,000 down. I was using my mind. It wasn't that I spent 250 or 2,500 hours or whatever the number was, making $10 or $100 an hour to get 25,000. My dad, when he retired, was making $50,000, $60,000 a year. So I basically created, using my brain and solving a problem, I created a solution that was the equivalent of somebody working a half a year. And I did that literally in 1 hour. I was on a phone call.
Yeah.
So when we start thinking differently as an entrepreneur, solving problems versus punching a clock, it changes everything in life, because you realize there's no real upward limit.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's funny, I was out last night meeting some of my work colleagues, and it was an event I went to, and we always, the guy that invited me to the event is always someone I used to work with. So we're always talking about different ideas about to do this, do that. Some have synergy with some, what he might and I might not. But what's very interesting about what you just said there, everything is, but particularly around the idea of being able to think differently about time and about how we make money and what a pound sign or a dollar sign means to time that we spent. Because I think very often I think the school system, the educational system doesn't teach that entrepreneurial mindset where we can think outside, maybe, working 12 months a year for 50 grand or whatever it is. It's developing. I don't know how to do it. Maybe you might have some ideas about how people, if they're watching and listening, can shift that thought process to think differently about time and money.
I would say this, that our school system is not going to do it. And in reality, when you go there, what we're taught in school, if anything, is, hey, go pick a stock and in 30 days, we'll see if it's higher. And then that's what people are taught about investing. And that's a bunch of bollocks. I mean, it's crazy because all you're turning into is a speculating psychopath that thinks up and down is the only option instead of creating value as an entrepreneur. So how do you do that? I don't know if there's a clear path as a kid. As a parent, there's a great opportunity to ask the kid and kids are curious. So, you go to a kid and you say, what could you do to create value? Like, could you go buy a bicycle and rent it out in addition to your bicycle? Like, there's a million things Jim Rohn said that a lot before he passed away. Basically triggering kids to come up with ideas, because kids are crazy, creative. Like, it's awesome. And they come up with the crazy, like just the wildest stuff. So I don't see that happening in schools. I think schools are basically a factory for the industrial age, and that's not going to result in entrepreneurs. You see some schools that have entrepreneurial programs, maybe like Babson or different business schools. But before the higher education space, I think it's really about being curious and then encouraging people to go fall on their face. I mean, My Perfect Failure is a great title for this whole space, because the encouragement is go do something, and when it fails, let's figure out what you learned, and then you go to the next one. More than half, probably 60 to 70% of the businesses that I've started over the last 30 years have not gone anywhere, and all they did was teach me something. I spent money to learn things, much like college, except these were real things. These were not theoretical, somebody's thesis that they were pounding down and making me memorize. This was actual reality. It was getting a PhD in the blood and the mud in the real world. And that's what we got. We get inspiring people to go fall on their face and realize they're not going to get killed or eaten by the mistake. In fact, it's going to make them stronger, and it's going to be a launching pad for what ultimately ends up being successes and impacts on the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Immediate question that comes to mind. You talked about businesses that have worked and some that haven't. When do you know when to pursue an opportunity that you've stumbled upon, and maybe actually, no, this one isn't going to achieve maybe the ambitions that I've got, so that this one is a pause, or it's a no?
There's a weird balance between thinking too big and thinking too small. And what I mean by that is, I was meeting with one of our potential investors, and she was talking yesterday. She was talking about having somebody that was going to write a $300 million check. And she's not in that space where that's a reality. Now, certain people are, where a $300 million check is a normal thing. But if you're saying, okay, the first thing I'm going to do is become Facebook, and I'm going to be worth $100 billion, and this is your first business or your second, there's a cognitive dissonance towards delusion. And it's because you just want to skip. It's like you want to hack past the thing. The other end of that is going and saying, I'm going to start too small. I'm going to take a tiny, tiny baby step. Maybe you take a full step, maybe not just a baby step, because if it's too small of a step, you're going to spend your whole life tiptoeing safely to death's door instead of actually making a step that grows you. So what's the proper first thing? It's really, you're not going to make a mistake by taking a step, but when you try to take all the steps at once, you try to leap from here to the moon, you're not going to get anywhere, because you don't have a stair step, you don't have a ladder, you don't have a rocket. And people make that mistake and they never get anywhere. All they talk about is, I'm going straight to a billion, and I'm gonna be a unicorn. That's insane. It's not smart. And it's kind of like saying my plan is a lottery event. People's literal event for wealth is, I'm going to keep buying lottery tickets, and there is a guaranteed path to financial slavery where you sit there with a bunch of dead lottery tickets and a struggle towards no financial independence. So what do? You say, okay, what can I do that's beyond me? How can I serve other people? And then ask yourself, the next question is, how could I do this 10 times bigger? How could I do it 100 times bigger? The exponential thinking forces you out of your comfort zone. The initial reaction is, I can go and I can start a restaurant and I can do it. And it's a taco stand on the side of the road and it's going to serve a few people. That could be a great start, but I think the thinking has to start with, how could I do this where it would be 10 or 100? And then ask yourself if your business or your vision has that capacity, because that's where you're going to stretch yourself into your potential. If it's just a small thing, you're not really impacting the world the way that most people can. They just cut themselves short out of security and safety.
Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting around that, because I think I do meet a lot of entrepreneurs. I go to a lot of events, and I think there's definitely, people have maybe confusion, or you put a lot of effort into something and it's probably not yielding the results that they want. And I think sometimes, I think you've hit the nail on the head, sometimes their ambitions, or they want to they think they're going to become a unicorn quite, I say quite quickly. Maybe that's their ambition. So they're not seeing the progress that they want quick enough. And then sometimes they pull out because they've got unrealistic expectations. I think that's one problem. And then I think another one is, maybe they haven't done the homework. So maybe they haven't done their product market fit. So they're not getting the results that they want because there was never any product market fit.
Yeah, I'll speak to both of those. The first one I would call the plateau, where things you think you're just beating your head into a wall and you're not going anywhere. This happens in martial arts, where you're doing the thing over and over. And as a 25-year martial artist, there's times where you'll spend months or years doing what you think is the same thing over and over, and you don't seem to be getting, progress isn't happening. And what happens is, one day, one moment, all of a sudden it pops, and you pop to a new plateau. And it's like, oh, it's magic. Well, it wasn't magic. It was you being willing to be resilient. The universe was testing you. And that happens in business. Oftentimes you're being tested. And so that's a huge thing that people miss, because they say it's not happening fast enough. Sometimes it's not your timeline. Usually it's not your timeline. It's somebody else's timeline, and meaning the universe or God, or it's something else. And you've got to be willing to be resilient. So then sometimes you have to be willing to say, all right, this isn't working. Now, when do you know when to push forward, and when do you know when to quit? That's wisdom, experience, and it's not perfect. There is absolutely a time to say this is the wrong thing. But and part of that is the market is going to tell you. It's going to give you feedback. I've spent a lot of money doing research, market surveys, focus groups, all this kind of stuff. And what's interesting is those things are great for consultants and wasting a lot of money. And oftentimes it's the exact opposite. What you should be doing is going and asking the market directly. Literally, bring your thing, a minimum viable product. You call it the MVP. You bring the product or service, and then you see if anybody wants to trade money for your thing. And if they don't, the market doesn't care. So as much as people say you're supposed to follow your passion, it's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Like in reality, follow your purpose. And you don't know what that is necessarily until the world, the universe, people respond. So go out, you take your thing, your idea, and you test it. And when it doesn't work, which most won't work, you say, okay, good feedback, learning, go to the next thing. The market is your friend. The market's going to be real, and it's going to give you honest feedback in your brain, or your friends, or your mom, or your dad. It's funny because people will literally tell you, this is a great idea. The question is, would they pay for your idea? And usually the answer is no. Sometimes it's yes, but until money that's the energetic transference of value. And if somebody says your thing is worth more than my money, then you got something. If they won't transfer the money, then your thing isn't worth anything to them. And if it's not a business, it's literally just a hobby or a charity. So being rational about that makes all the difference in the world. And being rational quicker, you can spend a year just thinking about your thing, being in your head, which is very safe, being around your friends. And then a year later, the market says no. So the sooner you can get to the market and get that feedback, that's when you know you've got something either to run with or to kill.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a very interesting question as well. And what you mentioned about follow your passion, you hear that banded about a lot. And I think that can lead people down a dead end a lot, because people generally do think, well, yeah, I'm going to go and follow my passion. And if there's no market there, then we can spend a whole bunch of time, a whole bunch of money following something where there was never generally an opportunity. So I think that's definitely something that I hope, I should look at, and other people should look at as well. But if our passion, it's nice to have passion, but if there's no tangible problem there where we can come up with a solution that can impact people, and to your point, people are happy to give money based on a solution or a problem, sorry, then yeah, we kind of got to veer away from that.
Yeah, and I would say that passion, there's nothing wrong with passion if passion and purpose are aligned. If you've got something, if it's just passion, like nobody, look, you can be excited about something, but it doesn't mean that it's a business or that anybody cares to transfer their money for it. So is Elon Musk passionate? Absolutely. Does he have purpose? 100%. Does the market care? Yes. So you look at all those things. One of the problems with people when they're passionate is it's fun. They get excited. But I'll tell you what, a lot of business is not necessarily fun. It is a grind. It is hard. It's exhausting. And when people go, oh, well, my passion is deflated because I've got to go work on the nights and the weekends and I'm doing the things, I'm learning accounting. I hate accounting. The things that you have to do to make something work. And when that gets hard, people go to the next fun, passionate project. And they never get anywhere. So you've got to decide, am I willing to commit and be resilient and push through whatever the struggle is, the pain, because it is not all fun. All these businesses I've done, the overnight success story of having $1 billion company today that everybody thinks, wow, this just happened in a few years. This took 30 years. This took 30 years and 70 plus companies. And is that a really fun model? No, nobody wants to do that. Now, does it take 30 years? No, that's me being dumb. I paid a lot of dumb tax the first 10 to 15 years, and you can hack past that. I don't think my position is that you can do anything, go from anywhere you are to 10 million plus or 100 million. That can be done inside of a decade, but you have to be willing to leverage off of other people's stuff. If you're going to do it yourself and your ego is going to drive it, it is going to take you your whole life if you ever get there. You've got to leverage off of other people and be willing to go through a lot of pain. That's the difference. You think Elon Musk has not gone through incredible amounts of pain? I mean, holy crap, the last 10 years, everybody's attacking him. The auto industry, the US government, everybody's going after him. Why? Because that's what happens. People will try to tear you down when you're growing and exceeding them. And they're going to say, no, you're threatening our status quo. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to do something remarkable, which is most people's potential is remarkable, you've got to be willing to say, I don't care what people try to do to me.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. I'm going to push right through it.
I agree with that. What do you like about entrepreneurship?
It's entrepreneurship and business to me is art. And I think it's one of the fun things is you get to create and you get to throw paint on the wall, and that's different businesses. You get to build things. I think we're all meant to be builders. We're all meant to build things. We're not meant to just consume. One of the interesting statistics in the United States, after a man, there's statistics I know on men, it may be similar with women, but with men, after a man retires, the average man dies within 30 months. And that's because they're not building anything. They're not creating anything. They've lost purpose, because for most men, there's a purpose tied to their work. And women tend to have, sometimes that happens, and other times it's tied to families or different. Men and women are different. I'm not on the bandwagon that we're all the same. We are very different. And if we don't have purpose, we're just consuming. When I hear people saying, I just want to get to a place where I'm on a yacht or I'm on a beach and that's it, you're not going to last long, because it's just you. And if you do survive, you're not going to have much joy other than the moments of hedonistic bliss, which I'm very familiar with. That was my 20s, hedonistic bliss.
You've done all that.
I've done it, and it's having shiny objects and having money and having Ferraris and all that crap. I'm not saying don't do it. Sometimes we have to go through it just to say, okay, I don't want that anymore. But we're meant to be producing, creating, building. And if we're not doing that, we miss out on part of the experience of life where we're contributing. One of the basic human needs is contribution. It's contributing to others. That starts with family, and then it goes to community, and then it goes to the world. Like, there are rings of contribution, and missing out on any of those is a problem. If you're just going to the world, but then you leave your family behind, that there's going to be a consequence. So it's worth thinking about. What are you doing, building, creating for these different rings of the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking around ideas. So how do ideas come to you? So you've 70 businesses today, and they're all different. What's very interesting about some of your ventures, you've got real estate, you've got precious metals, you've got media, you've got insurance. How do you stumble upon an idea and then think, yeah, I'm going to run with this? There's something in it to look at.
It starts with there's ideas everywhere. We're constantly around ideas. People have opportunities. We're presented in the beginning. We tend to say yes. Look, if you're an entrepreneur, you say yes to everything because you're like, oh man, this is a great idea. There's opportunities here. When you get more seasoned and you get wiser, I would say, you say no to almost everything. It's the opposite of the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man. You literally are no man. It was no thank you. And so today I get opportunities coming at me, investments, businesses, and my answer is no thank you. Virtually all the time. And it doesn't mean I won't support somebody or cheer them on or introduce them to somebody or whatever. It means that I'm not going to divert from my focus with the most important thing. Saying no is the most powerful thing that the ultra successful people do over people that are just successful or not successful. People, when you say no, you hold space open for the things that really matter. In the beginning, you don't really know what matters. So you're chasing everything, which keeps you really fractured. You're not going to, when somebody says, I've got these 5 different things I'm doing. Now, you do not use Elon Musk as an example because he's got Neuralink and Boring Company and Tesla and SpaceX. That wrong model. In reality, when you've got more than one thing that you're focused on, you're not focusing on anything. You're literally a very hungry cheetah in Africa where you're chasing all sorts of gazelles. You're not getting into any. You got to pick one. Pick the thing. Go attack the thing. Eat the thing. Now, for the vegans out there, that's probably really rough to hear that. But the reality is, if you die because you starve to death, which is what happens in business because you're splintered, you're gonna there's a life of regret, and that's the greatest problem I've seen. I saw it with my dad right before he died. He looked out at the world and had weeks left, and he said to me, there were so many things that I wanted to do. He never picked a thing. He picked everything, which meant he picked nothing. That's one of the biggest problems. And it's gotten worse because there are so many feeds on social media and shiny objects everywhere. More than we are overstimulated and overexhausted. Our adrenal glands are burned out because we're chasing every freaking thing that exists. And we look at it as if it's all easy and it's right in front of us. And then we get nowhere and we wonder why we're unhappy because we don't have any purpose because we're chasing too many things. Find the one thing, say no to everything else.
Yeah. And I think I do see that as well. And I talk about skill a lot, and I think it is a skill to develop that ability to maybe not look for the quick win, because the internet is full of, I guess, say fabrication, but there's probably not as much authenticity as we want to see on the internet about people that are doing genuine things and achieving wonderful things. It clearly is there, but I think people assume that people are having these achievements quite. Sometimes the internet makes it look quite easy, but it isn't. And I think because of that, people just chase any number of different things, hoping that it's going to be a cakewalk for them to go from an idea to actually success. And the reality is, and you'll be a better judge of this than me because you've created 70 companies, but even if you do have success, it's not plain sailing. There are going to be some incredibly challenging moments that will test us beyond what we think, what resilience we think we have. And yeah, so I think that's a skill set that I think would be great for people to have, but they need to be listening to people like you, find good role models that have been through the process and going through the process that are further on down the line than them, where they can learn some of these realistic techniques that can help them choose their project or idea and the steps that they can go through to make it successful.
Yep, I totally agree with you.
So we spoke about you becoming an entrepreneur about 11 or really dabbling in that space. Were your parents or anybody in your family, did you have anybody else that was an entrepreneur, or were you kind of like were your parents and all your uncles and aunties thinking, what's going on here?
It's interesting because there was an entrepreneurial bent with my dad. He did that early on, not when I was really a kid to much of a degree, but that was his core. And then he let it go and he stopped pursuing it and he went towards security. And that unfortunately that was a big problem because it killed his spirit. And I didn't have other people around me that were. I mean, my world was very lower middle class. It was above poverty, but it wasn't much further above poverty. We were struggling. We were told there wasn't any money. and it was me just being frustrated. And so when you put people in a pressure cooker, oftentimes they pop out in kind of in a cool form, because frustration and friction leads to diamonds being created. That's, in a lot of ways, that's what led to it. It led to me looking at things, the world, as a series of problems to solve, challenges to overcome. When I was in college for the second time, I went there and I looked at the bookstore, and they were charging people, I thought, were heinous amounts of money for used books. And I said, I could do better. So I started a bookstore in my dorm room and undercut the bookstore and basically took all the business from them one semester and put them out of business. And then I got thrown out of school because they didn't like the fact that the bookstore was not making any money and couldn't survive. And I said, well, they can't survive because they're ripping people off. And ultimately Amazon came in and changed the model. But that was me seeing a problem and saying, I can solve the problem. When you solve problems, the market, if you're really solving a problem, the market is going to pay you. And the bigger the problem, the bigger the payday. When people bitch about Jeff Bezos being worth $200 billion, and then they go click 14 times a month or 40 times a day, I mean, depending on who it is, me, it's 40 times a day. When they're using this service and it creates freedom and options, it's really interesting because that guy just solved a massive problem. The total friction and the struggle of getting things efficiently to us. And then we get upset. But the reality is that guy solved a huge problem. That's why Amazon is a multi-trillion-dollar company. And same with Elon. Elon is solving problems. I mention these people because that's all that's happening. You're solving problems, and the market is going to either say, no, it's not a problem, or if it is a problem, the money takes care of itself. That's what I'm getting at. The money, when people chase the money, they're chasing the wrong thing. You got to chase the problem with the solution.
Yeah. And I think that's an important point, because I think it's very, particularly, I go back that the images we see online and so forth, people can't think about the money. Or sorry, they think solely about the money, and I think it hinders, as opposed, because you're not really thinking about the solution. If you've got a great solution, then actually it takes care of itself, and it's being able to, I guess, work with the right people and just think about solution, and then the customers will come, hopefully 100%. in droves.
That's right.
So on your journey, was fear ever there for you?
There's fear is always there around mistakes, and what I have a friend that wrote a book, and it's basically fear. His name is Peter Scott. It's about the fear and being fearless, and the truth is, even like look at somebody that you'd think would have no fear. It's the Navy SEALs. These guys go in there and they go into places where people are trying to kill them, and they're trying not to get. It's a pretty scary thing for most people. Like most of us don't have that daily interaction where we're going into a firefight. And I asked one of my friends one time that was a retired SEAL, I said, man, you guys are like fearless. He said, oh, no, dude, we're not fearless. We're a bunch of chicken shits. And I said, what? And he said, no, we just train. We train so that we move in spite of the fear. And you get the courage after you go through the thing. You don't get the courage and then you go do the thing. You literally take a step into the firefight. And the smart thing is you have training. So when you go in, now I've done the opposite. I didn't have training. I got the training in the middle of the firefight. Is it the smartest thing? I don't know. It's one approach. Is it what I'll continue doing? Probably. I do it because I'm a quick start. I go in and I figure it out on the fly. Like I literally go into whatever battle it is, and then I figure it out. Now, as you get older and you get wiser, maybe not older, but definitely wiser, you start saying, let me do a little bit more planning and training before I jump into the thing. And there's certain things, it's like I wrote a book years ago called Unicornomics. It was the foundational 15% of any business that's required to have an 85% likelihood of success. Why do you want that? Because 9 out of 10 businesses die within 5 years. And then out of those that succeed or are still around, 9 out of 10 of those die the next 5 years. So you've got a 99% death rate with businesses over the first decade. Why? Because they don't have the foundational setup. Why would you set yourself up for a 99% failure when you can have an 85% likelihood of success? Just ask yourself, it's literally the flip-flop. And it's because there are certain foundational principles that if you follow those, you have a very high likelihood of success. When people are told, well, so-and-so has a magic touch. No, they don't. They just have principles that they're following. They think differently. It's first principle thinking. It's a completely different way of approaching life. When people are acting from their gut, their instincts, their emotions, that's when they blow up because it's all about emotion. but you got to have the principles. You got to have the foundations. That's the difference now. When I look at I say no to things because most of them don't pass the qualifying, like, hey, is this a good idea? And I ask a bunch of questions about the business. Do I have the capital? Do I have the team? Is there really a problem in the market? Would they care? Most things, the answer is no to something, and it means no, I'm not pursuing this. In the beginning, it was I'm going to chase everything, even though it had a whole lot of boxes unchecked. And that's how most people pick businesses or pick pursuits. They don't really think about it because thinking is hard work, and thinking requires time and energy. And we oftentimes don't have the answers, and it requires us going and finding them. That's what people have to figure out, and they have to go do that work. Unfortunately, it's not fun. And people like fun. They like what you said on social media. There's a lot of things out there that look fun. We see the highlight reels for people's lives. We don't see the hard grind, the pain, the struggle. You don't see Michael Phelps training 10 hours a day for 10 years. You see him holding 25 gold medals. Yeah, that's the end thing that looks really cool. But are you willing to pay the price? Arnold Schwarzenegger did the same thing. Any great athlete or success story, any entrepreneur, there is a whole bunch of death and mayhem in their wake, in their past that they've gone through. Nobody gets there without the pain.
Yeah, absolutely. Because very often when you see these super successful people, whether they be entrepreneurs or the Arnies or the Michael Phelps of this world, sometimes people will be, I can do that. And they haven't done the homework. They haven't looked in to the hours and hours and the years and years and years of struggle and sacrifice to get to that point where they're achieving things. And it's also interesting what you said around that foundational work that we can do to mitigate the failure rate of ventures. And it's, on one side, it's alarming because there are like 90% of businesses, I think you said, that fail within the first 5 years. But what is encouraging, if people do take stock and do that foundational work, they can actually have success. So it's just pivoting. Don't get frustrated. Be patient. Do the homework. Make sure you've asked those foundational questions, and then hopefully their business won't be within that 90%. So that I'm taking that as the go-to homework for hopefully everybody looks at that foundational stuff. Make sure they do that.
There's something that along those lines that I teach. It's called a decade by design, and it requires really the first year of that decade to be a foundational year. It doesn't mean you just sit there and stare at a piece of paper, but it does mean that you think through all the things and you start taking action on the foundational stuff. What happens is it looks more like an exponential curve or a hockey stick where you do work and you go, wow, year 7, 8, 9, something happened and it out of nowhere, but it was all the years beforehand. And you got to start with the foundational stuff. So if you were to listen to this and it's the end of 24 or the beginning of 25, my suggestion is figure out what your outcome is for the 10 years down the road, what kind of impact you want to have. And then ask yourself, and sometimes you're going to have no idea, which means you need to go find mentors. You need to go find masterminds, people that have been there and that have done it. Not people that went to a seminar, not people that read a book, but people that have actually got the experience. And you set up the first year as your foundational year, all the things, the habits, the people you need to meet, the things you need to do, the things you need to learn. You get all that organized and you start on the process to give yourself some momentum. And that's what's going to take you into the next 9 years where you have a decade by design, because most people's next decade is going to be by default. It's going to look very similar. You might be a little bit grayer, you might be a little bit fatter, but you're going to look a lot similar from the last decade, the next decade. So it's thinking about what needs to happen over this next 12 months. And then what steps what can I put on my calendar so that it's literally happening? And then I don't know about you, but boy, I'll tell you what, the last year went by in a heartbeat. The next year will go by.
Yeah.
It'll fly by. Question is, are you going to get there and say, man, I am on fire, I've got momentum? Or are you going to say, man, I'm in more debt, I've got an extra 10 pounds and my life is not going the direction I want? Well, you got to set yourself up for that success. What is it? And what are you going to put in place on your calendar?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So for you, I keep on going back to starting at 11. At what point, if at all, did mentors come into play for you?
It started pretty early when I was in college, and then I lasted a year before I left because it just wasn't fitting my spirit, my soul. You'd asked a question a while back about growing up and was I around entrepreneurs? I was around people that when I left college, they were freaked out. When are you going back to college? When are you doing the thing? When are you going to become a droid in somebody's system? And the answer was no, I'm not. In fact, I stopped listening to them. And who I did listen to were people that had been out there doing things. They had books and tapes, and I studied them. The people in my life, the mentors, were people like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and the real estate gurus that are out there. And I always laugh when people say, you spent $5,000 for 2 days at a seminar. Man, that's like as much as, well, not anymore, but it's as much as college is for a semester. And I say, you know what? That weekend made me $1 million, literally in the next year. That happened over and over again.
Really? Wow.
Did college make me $1 million ever in a semester? No, the answer is no. And for virtually everybody, a semester of college will not make you what a weekend seminar would make you. So I started listening to people that had actually were doing things. It was not theory, it was practical. And it started off with books and tapes. There's nobody on the planet, and especially now because everything is free pretty much, there's nobody that has the excuse that you don't have a mentor or a mastermind. You just go to YouTube. There are so many people that share their ideas, and then you say, okay, that's an idea I'm going to act on. So I started doing that before there really was even YouTube. It was when books and tapes that you burn out in your car. And I listened to those. And so I started absorbing people before I was physically around them. And then eventually that led into relationships where I was around people. They became my friends. Masterminds evolved. Some I started, some I joined. And I kept investing in myself, which I will tell you is the greatest investment you're ever going to make. It's not stocks, it's not real estate. It's the money you spend on you, growing you, doing not just becoming a better golfer, not just becoming a better piano player or whatever, but really your personal development. It's by far the greatest return you'll ever have on any investment. I mean, we're talking hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of percent return. You spend $1,000, that could be worth millions and millions of dollars. There's no college in the world that's going to get you like that. And that's the hack. Everybody in the world, I don't care if you're in the savannah of Africa or if you're in the middle of the Siberia, it doesn't make any difference. You have access to it because everybody has access to the ability to get some type of phone and access to the wisdom of the world and historically the greatest achievers and thinkers. So at this point, it's a choice. There is no more, I don't have access. I don't care where you are. The most repressive regime in the world, whether it's Peru or Ukraine, it doesn't matter where you are. It's absolutely a choice at this point, and we're interconnected with the internet. So I just look at people that have excuses, and I say, well, you know what? It's an excuse. It's your choice. You are where you are because you chose it. Don't tell me it's anybody, unless you're in prison, and you also probably chose to be in prison. So I mean, the reality is we all make choices, and so it's very cool because you have the power to control your life.
And even in prison these days, you can get hold of books, uplifting books. So even in prisons, if you want to get out, hopefully if you haven't done anything too serious, you've got access to books so you can learn, you can evolve, you can develop, as long as you haven't done something too serious. I wanted to ask a question. I've got loads of questions, but I'm mindful of time, and I want to get into about what happened at 30. But before I do that, I wanted to ask around, because we're talking about mentors, and I always think about people that are entrepreneurs, particularly when you're starting out, when maybe we're not as invested in whatever we're going to pursue, and maybe we're wavering a little bit because we're maybe a little bit unsure about ourselves. We don't have that confidence to go sort of 10 toes in. So what about being around people that may be not entrepreneurs, that may be not giving us the right vibes, the right energy about what we're looking to do? Did you ever in your journey have to maybe think, when I'm doing the entrepreneurial stuff, I don't need to be around these people? It might be family, it might be friends, just because they're not really the sort of people that, although I'm cool with them, they're not going to give me the right energy about what I'm focused on.
This may be one of the hardest things for people because everything has energy. Everything has an impact. The people that are around you, whether it's a spouse, your friends, your mom, your dad, like all these people, colleagues, workers, they're going to have an impact. The way that they think, the way that they operate. So the question is, who's going to influence you? And if you're not willing to change some of the people in your life so you can have energy that's positive, then the negative, and when I say negative, I'm talking about people that are focused on security more than opportunity and creation. Most people, and I'm saying this in all sincerity, most people are more focused on security than anything else. They're trying to figure out how they don't starve to death or die. In different versions, they're trying to figure out how to keep making their payments on their house and their cars and their life. And so the question is, are you willing to open up space and have other people in there? Most people, the answer is no. They want to keep going and watching football, and they want to go drink beer, and they want to do these things, and that's what their life is going to look like in 10 years. So is that bad? No. But it comes back to a choice. Do you have to change your environment if you want to change your life? The answer is yes. Might be a different city, it might be a different house. It's certainly going to be different people, because you're going to become just like the people that are around you. There's a saying that you become the average of the 5 people around you in every way: your money, your integrity, your health, how fat you are, how fit you are, how smart you are. If you're around a bunch of PhDs, I promise you're going to get smarter, because you're going to be you're going to be looking up everything they say. You're like, what are they talking about? And it's going to force you to up your game. If you're around people that are dodo birds, that literally are just either dumb or not doing anything, you're going to become a dodo bird. That's a natural thing. And why does it happen? It's primal. It's because we want to blend in primarily for survival. If you stick out, you get eaten. And I mean, that's the truth. That's what's happened for millions of years. Humans that were on their own got picked off by nature, by animals, by whatever. And there's a primal instinct with us where we are, and if you think about it, if you're on your own out in the wild, you don't have community. Community is the most important thing, I would say, to impact and affect our life and our future. So you got to be really thoughtful about that. And if it's by default, just look around and you can see your future.
Yeah. And I think that's it can be tricky more than tricky for people that are entrepreneurs, that are on pursuit, because also I think they've got fear. They might see you prospering and maybe taking those gambles, but they don't have the confidence to do that. So maybe they're more inclined to want to pull you in line with what they're doing, because it feels safer to them, and maybe they don't feel so consequence for not having the same ambition to pursue whatever dreams or ambitions they have.
That's
and
right.
You have those regrets. So at 30 years of age, something more than significant happens where you lose a whole bunch of money. That sounds, I think, 20 million to be exact. So how did that happen? And how does somebody recover from that type of situation?
Well, the first thing, when you bet big, when you go for it, there's a very high, especially early on, there's a very high likelihood that you're going to not know what you don't know. I mean, 100% of the time. And so in my case, when I did my real estate, I made a bunch of money, and my ego didn't understand cycles. And so it made millions and millions. And then in 2008, lost 25 million. And that was an opportunity for me to reset and be humbled and be homeless. I mean, it was that was part of it. And so I spent some time living in my car, and the process of going through that was the most valuable thing maybe that I've ever done and gone through, because it taught me more than any of the millions, any of the successes would ever teach. The failures, the flops, that's where all the learning and the growth is. And it took about 5 years for me to go through it. And the way I got through it was asking hard questions. What's the truth? And I spent time with somebody else that helped me go through that, asking the question every week, what is true? And then peeling back layers of the onion. And getting to the other side of that, then I found this core of me and this new power of understanding purpose. It wasn't just internally, how much do I consume? It was, how much can I contribute? What else could I do? How else could I evolve to serve more people? And that's what led to the things that I'm doing now, freeing people with their retirement money, giving them a path towards financial freedom, building a disruptive manufacturing plant that's solving the housing crisis. All that stuff happened because I was thinking differently on the other side of losing 25 million. And I started asking, how can I serve more people to my potential? That's where the purpose comes into play. So I needed that. If I had just made millions, like a lot of these yo-yos on the internet that say, look, just do this and you can have Ferraris and Lamborghinis and houses at the ocean. That's not real. It's just not real. Like you have to, there's a process we all have to go through. And it was a blessing. It was truly a blessing to be able to go through it. In the middle of it, it sucked ass. It was terrible. Yeah. But it was also the most important process I've ever had to go through.
Yeah, well, I can imagine. And immediately I'm captured by, I think you said it was an opportunity to reset, it was an opportunity to evolve. And it's comforting hearing that because of the words you used. You got to the point where you're able to see it as a blessing, as an opportunity. How many people could possibly think that losing 25 million and being homeless is an opportunity? and have that mindset where they're actually really open to peeling the onion to understand what happens, who am I, what is my mission really, what were the fundamental mistakes that I made, how do I want to correct them, how do I want to leave them, to not just pick yourself up, but pick yourself up and actually go into the stratosphere doing any number of different worthwhile ventures that are primarily helping your customers. Actually, they're the people that are getting service because because you're really thinking about what are the problems out there that actually I want to tackle, where I know there are people that generally are going to benefit from these things. And I think also I don't know what your thoughts on this around entrepreneurship. Are some of the problems that people have when we're looking at our ventures that we're just thinking about, I think you've already covered this, but we're thinking about the money. We're not really thinking about solving a problem.
I think most people are thinking about the money because it's the immediate. It's like we're hungry, so we're thinking about the food, and so it's just the immediate hand to mouth experience. And sometimes it requires being hungry while you're planting a garden. I mean, you can go out and you can go kill something, and that's what people do. They go trade their time for money. They get some money, and then they got to go do it again. It's the same thing. You go kill a squirrel or whatever. You go kill something. You eat it, and the difference is if you're a farmer, you may be hungry a lot. And it takes time to go through seasons and nurture, plant, and cultivate. And then on the other side of that, you have this incredible garden and this orchard that feeds you. That's what building a business is. So the difference between a job and a business that you own and being a hunter versus being a farmer is you're building something sustainable, and it's easy to go kill something and then be fed. And then you got to do it again. And you're always chasing the survival. When you build a business, it's very different. And that's the difference. It's a different mindset. How much pain are you willing to endure? Entrepreneurs that are the most successful are the ones that have the highest tolerance for pain.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And has that evolved over the years where has it just happened organically where where you've become resilient? Or has it been more where you've sought out mentors, or maybe a combination of everything?
It's definitely, there's a combination. Like there's a process where you have to be willing to stub your toe and go, oh man, that was dumb. And then you also it's the sooner that you can have mentors, the sooner that you can humble yourself to say, I don't know, and ask questions. The biggest problem I see, and I've seen this with people, I've had business partners, I've seen it with people that I just know in general, where their ego gets to a point where they think that they're super smart and they don't need to listen to me or other people, or they stop listening to the right people. They start listening to people that make them feel better instead of people that are telling them the truth, because their pride and their arrogance takes over. I've seen that very closely over the years with people I've worked with, and it's unsustainable. I see the fall coming for somebody that goes into that level of arrogance and pride. Now, if you ask Michael Jordan, hey, are you the best? He would say yes. And the guy's not going to say, oh, I don't know, I'm okay, because he's earned it. And so, but most people haven't earned it, but they want to pretend they have because they want people to think that they're important. And from my perspective, you're literally asking for your downfall. You're setting yourself up for the crash because you don't have the humility. I'm constantly asking people around me, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? Tell me. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to second guess myself. It means I'm going to challenge myself. And am I on the right thinking? And sometimes I'm going to say, yeah, I'm thinking right, and other people are wrong. And I'm also very, very fast to self-correct when people say, hey, I think this is a mistake. And I think about it and I go, you know what, you're right. So there's a willingness to be wrong. And the faster you can assess that and be objective and not totally subjective, the faster you can move through into the truth.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And I think sometimes people will kind of convey total confidence around their abilities and that type of thing when they don't, well, they haven't had those real utopian moments, and it really doesn't, and they don't really have the humility that you've described that you have, and a lot of people that have actually achieved that, and you wonder where that disconnect is, and it's clearly I don't know where the disconnect is, but I think once you get that and you go through that process, then you can really have success, which is really what they want. I'm
Yeah.
conscious of time. So very quickly, I'm going to ask you. So your two businesses that I've written down are, I don't know whether you wanted to speak on these. I've got Frametec and eOrc. I probably haven't pronounced those correctly, but I don't know whether
Yeah.
you wanted to speak on those.
Yeah, so eQRP is the company that
Okay.
gives people control of their retirement accounts. Literally, you get to choose what you want to invest in, not just stocks and bonds, but you can take 401ks and IRAs. And it's an incredibly cool tool where you can design your life around the things that matter to you. You can invest in things, whether it's real estate or Bitcoin or gold or startup companies, and you get to take this retirement money that the government says, hey, you get to shield this from taxes, maybe forever. And it's a community of thousands of people that are in control of their money, and they work together. So it's a built-in mastermind for people, which is really cool. Most places you're just not going to have a built-in. You go buy a mutual fund. There's no mastermind. You're just by yourself.
Yeah.
And so eQRP it's all about the community and people becoming freer together, breaking the financial shackles. So you can learn about that if you want to check it out at eqrp.com. And Frametec is the disruptive manufacturing company that is solving the housing crisis. We're literally reimagining how framing is done. We've built manufacturing plants. Our first one is running right now, and our second one is under construction. And it builds all the bones for houses. So 92% of houses and apartments in America are built using wood frames, but they're built with guys in a field with a hammer and nails, maybe a nail gun. And it's very archaic. And what we've done is reimagine what that looks like. So now we've got a process that builds things 4 times faster with 10 times better quality and with 99% less waste. So no more dumpsters full of wood. It's just some sawdust. So we've done that with Frametec, and that's changing the entire world. Literally, we've got people in Australia and Europe asking about doing the same process. And it's going to help the affordability with housing. It's going to help reduce the costs and produce a lot more housing. And it's because we're imagining something different, not just doing more of the same, but doing something completely different than the entire industry is going to have to match and leapfrog past, which is cool because we're solving this problem, the problem of housing. So Frametec and that's where most of my energy is. It's in Frametec.
Sounds so exciting. That sounds so exciting. So these houses, are you producing the houses now? Are they developed, or are you still in the process of developing the houses?
Yeah, so when builders come to us and we're actually, but we've built houses and we're building more. We build the framing. So you think of us, we're the bones.
Okay.
So we're basically a vertically integrated framing company that does things, like I said, 4 times faster, 10 times better.
Okay.
That's really, it's that simple. It's very narrow. We're not doing everything with everybody. We're not Amazon. We're not some big home builder. We are the framing company that makes everybody else's lives easier, faster, and less expensive.
Okay. So if you're a developer, they can come to you, and then you would be able to actually put your solution into place. So they're going to have this this new modern framing, which is going to be far more, I guess, the most sustainable options on the market today.
Yeah, when builders come to us, they say, "You guys here's my plans for a house or an apartment," and we take that and we build all of the framing, all the floors, the walls, the trusses in our plant, and then our team takes it out and puts it together. So it's custom, it's by design, it's not manufactured housing.
Well.
Yeah, it's absolutely whatever people come to us with, and then we do it literally 4 times faster, and we give them a 10x better quality product because it's in a controlled environment in a manufacturing plant. So the builders are going crazy. We wish we had 10 times the plants right now, because that's how much demand there is in the market. People want this because it solves a problem. Framing is the biggest headache in building nationwide. It's the biggest problem. And they see this as an epic solution, and they've seen our quality right next to other traditional framed houses, and it's night and day. It's absolutely 1,000 times better. And people are seeing that. So the market is responding. This is what I was talking about earlier. The market responds if they care, and the market has said, we want everything you've got. And so at this point, we're ramping up and scaling, and you'll see these over the next 10 years across America.
Okay. So I'm in Europe. Will you come to Europe eventually?
So there are places in Europe that does frame construction. Every part of the world has different types of construction. So depending on, there are places in Europe that would use this technology that we have a patented process, and we're trademarked and patented, and some of those patents are in Europe because of the process. And so you'll likely see this in Europe and in Australia, and it's just a matter of time.
Okay. Okay. Well, so it's a silly question, and I'll keep on saying conscious of time, but I will wrap up in a second. But you're someone to me that clearly I think likes to learn because you're doing quite different things. Do you get intimidated by learning, or do you get excited about when you come up with an idea? Because clearly they're very different initiatives that you do and you've done. And so some people would be intimidated by the idea of bloody hell, there's a lot for me to absorb here. What's your reaction when you think I'm going to go into framing and housing?
I mean, it's exciting, and it's also there's a pragmatism around it. It's not I'm gonna go to the moon. I mean, that's Elon's deal. That's when I look at this, I go, you know what? The people that are in place. I'm learning. We're all learning together, but we're also not coming to this thing without without a background in everything. Whether it's the financing part, it's the manufacturing, it's the logistics. So I love the complexity and simplifying it. My theme for 2025 is simplicity. And what we're doing is finding ways to simplify very complex systems, which is the hardest work. It's not intimidating, it's inspiring, it's exciting. That's how I look at it. And part of that is I've gotten to the point where I realize anything that I don't know or that I need to learn or that I fail at, it's not going to kill me. It's not going to eat me.
Mm,
It's literally going to grow me. And when we're growing, we're not dying. You're either growing or dying. There is no flat where you're just like cruising. The universe doesn't work like that. Human beings don't work like that. So learning and growing shows me I'm alive. It's proof of life. And for everybody listening and watching, it is proof of life when you're growing. If you're not growing and learning, you are dying. And if you think that that's okay, you need to get your head checked.
okay, and that's an easy equation for all of us to use. Either we're learning or we're not. If we're not, we're dying. And so, okay, so two questions. One is, where can people find you? And I don't know if you've got any parting remarks. I don't know whether you do. There's courses or anything you do. So if you give us everything where people can find you, and then I've got the recurring question.
Yeah, so the best place to find me is turnkeyretirement.com. There's a book. It's a very quick, just a few pages, and it's the 10 steps to 10 million. And this is a really smart way for people to stretch past their static thinking, because you can trip yourself into $1 million or £1 million. You are not going to trip yourself into 10 million. And really, you've got to, if you want financial freedom, if you want to take money out of the equation in life, you got to figure out how you're going to get to 10 million. And this is the step-by-step process. And I've done it multiple times. This is not theory for me. This is something I did. I didn't inherit any money. In fact, it was the opposite. I was paying my parents. So it was like, that this is something that anybody can do. I didn't graduate from college. Like there's nobody that can't do it if you've got a 5th grade education. So it's turnkeyretirement.com. Go there, get a copy of this. It's free. You can download it. And it's my gift to you to help you on your process of financial freedom.
Okay, well, so I need to get this episode out as soon as I possibly can, because we want as many people as possible, expanding their minds. And if you can help people achieve financial freedom, that's no better gift for 2025 to get their minds thinking in a really positive and in a financially visionary way. And the last question is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, they can be alive or past. Who would you invite?
Well, they're all dead, because if somebody's alive and I want to have them to dinner, either I'm going to invite them or
Okay.
and I just flew out to Oregon a couple of days ago to have dinner with a friend I hadn't seen in 10 years. So
Amazing.
part of my answer is, if somebody's alive, go freaking have dinner. Fly there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it costs, because you will regret it if you don't. The 3 people that I would choose are, and one of them is probably cliche, but I'd love to have dinner with Jesus. And it's because there's very few people that have an impact the way that this person did. And it's not necessarily with a question. It's to be in that presence. That's what really matters. It's the presence of the people. Same thing with my second, and that's Wayne Dyer. This guy,
Yeah.
I listened to him a lot, and there was such a grounded, soulful energy around him, and I would love to spend time in his presence and just connecting with people. I think that there would be an incredible experience there. The last one is my grandfather. And he died when I was 2. My grandfather and my great grandfather died the same year, and I never had a chance to have any experience that I remember, because I was 2 years old. So having the ability to connect with people and understand where I'm from, and who that lineage, and then I heard great, amazing stories. I would like to be able to do that. So those are the 3, man. That's who
Yeah.
I'd have for dinner. It'd be an interesting dinner party.
Be an amazing dinner party, definitely, definitely. There's no doubt about that. And when you mentioned Wayne Dyer, when you spoke earlier around when you were starting out and you listened to people like Tony Robbins and those guys, earlier this week, I listened to something where Sarah Blakely talked about listening to Wayne Dyer exactly in the same way that you were doing, and how impactful it has been for her Spanx business and so forth. So yeah, so there's definitely, so you and Sarah, a testament to actually our mentors don't have to be people we know in person. They can be people that we can find their on YouTube or anywhere.
That's right.
Damion, thank you so much. This has been amazing. Hopefully we can stay in touch, because I've been inspired by listening to you and hearing about your journey. So thanks for your time today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me, and appreciate everything you're doing.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show. So please, if you are watching on YouTube, please do hit the subscribe button, and your feedback is really welcome. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the contact page on the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.